First off, I want to apologize for the way my voice sounds today. I have a horrible cold, and I am recovering. Also, please keep in mind that 2 years ago, I had a very crappy microphone. So the quality of this particular video won't be up to the quality that you're used to on my videos. On Friday, March 3rd, when the Switch comes out, I will be unboxing and playing my Switch live. U.S. Eastern 6 p.m. Dang it. U.S. Eastern 6 p.m. at twitch.tv/runjumpstomp. So if you want to get my reaction right then and ask questions, feel free to stop by. Thanks so much. 2 years ago, Nintendo announced that they were working on a new console, codenamed NX, and that became the Switch. These are my thoughts from 2 years ago on what the Nintendo Switch should be. Go ahead and give them a listen and let me know what you think.
Ever since Nintendo announced the NX, I've been thinking about what do they need to do to make sure that it's a success. Number one, I think it needs a good name that signifies that it's a new system and does not confuse consumers. In the past, Nintendo has not done this, so this is definitely something they need to figure out. Whoever's been in charge of their PR, or not PR, but their marketing, needs to be fired or replaced. Connectivity. Friend codes need to die in a big, bad way. They're a huge pain. Nintendo seems to have some, what's the word I'm looking for? Proclivity to making things difficult to communicate with your friends. The NX needs to have a system-wide friends list integration. That way it's easy to find your friends without putting in a 12-digit number. You need to be able to send a request to friends. You need to be able to send a request to be friends with somebody, and they need to get a notification that tells them. Right now, unless you tell the other person, hey, I'm going to friend you, they have no clue that they received a friend request. So you can't just be like, oh, what's your friend code, and then put it in, and then it tells them. They actually have to go in and say, has anybody tried to friend code me today? And if they don't do it in a certain amount of time, it expires, I think. Going along with connectivity, they also need to have a system-wide voice chat. Xbox 360 did it years ago. PlayStation 4... PlayStation 3. I'm not sure if they had system-wide. I think it was per game. But either way, this is definitely not a technological hurdle. This is Nintendo being conservative. So they definitely need to have system-wide voice chat. It needs to happen in a big way. Right now, a lot of people end up using Skype while playing a Wii U game online. And more often than that, they just don't bother playing it online because they can't communicate with their friends easily. Nintendo's aversion to allowing players to communicate effectively while playing has really hurt them in a big way. I seriously worry that they're going to put out Splatoon for the Wii U, which is a squad-based third-person shooter without voice chat, which means the game is pretty much a paperweight. You can't do a squad-based game without being able to communicate with the rest of your team. Club Nintendo's successor is going to be a single sign-in for multiple devices. I'm hoping that you can talk to your friends on the phone, not like, I don't mean like hold your phone up to your head and talk to your friends. I mean like texting. Although that would be kind of cool if you could join voice chat with your phone using your, whatever they call the new Club Nintendo account. So you're talking to your friends who are playing a game, and then when you get home, you shut off the phone and hop on the NX and join the same chat channel. That would be really cool. But anyway, if you could at least text to your friends in the Nintendo universe, whatever name they call it, while you're out and about using an app from Nintendo, and then that way you don't have to be tied to the console in order to say something and say, hey, we're playing this, do you want to join us? because some of the people that I play games with online, I don't give my phone number to. Controls. I love Nintendo's Wii U controller. It lets Nintendo's do something that other systems can't, but if Nintendo wants third-party support, they have to make sure that they keep the controls the same as the other consoles. That means they absolutely have to have, at a minimum, 2 analog sticks, 2 shoulder buttons, 2 analog triggers, the face buttons, and a D-pad. Right now, they don't have the analog triggers. They only have digital triggers. If they are going to have a touch screen on the middle of the controller, and I think they should because it's cool, it has to be a better quality, like iPad quality, and it needs to leave behind the pressure-sensitive touch and use a capacitive touch instead. Have the screen. They also need to make sure that the screen has a way to turn itself off. So if you're playing a game that doesn't use it, the battery of that controller doesn't drain as much. And Nintendo needs to make sure they don't try and force developers into shoehorning on-screen gameplay onto this thing. Because if they do, a lot of companies are going to say, well, we'll just develop for the other ones because it's easier. The last thing they need to do as far as the controls is let the Wii controllers die off. Every time motion controls are used in a game, I'm disappointed. It was a fun diversion when the Wii first came out, but the controllers are uncomfortable and imprecise. They're just not great. They're okay, but they're not great. And if we keep shoehorning them in, then we've got games that have... on the box, it's got like 4 different controllers that you can use for it. I would prefer you just have a default controller for the Wii U, and that's it. Their catalog. First and foremost, they need to launch with a new Mario game, or a new Zelda game, or both. Not a port from the Wii U, but a new game, and it has to be available at launch. There's been too many times where Nintendo launched a system with a weak lineup, and it killed it. Other systems can launch with a weak lineup because they know that other game companies like EA and Activision are going to fill in the gaps rather quickly. Nintendo doesn't have these relationships anymore, so if they launch with a massive first-party title, the NX will fly off the shelves, and developers will fall in line and start making games for it. Nintendo's biggest strength is its back catalog of awesome games. If Nintendo really wants to blow us away, they should use it. They should use a subscription service just like Xbox Live or PSN, and instead of giving out like, oh, here's a free game this month, if you subscribe to it, you should get all of the virtual console stuff that's available. Not just a few virtual console titles, but all of them that Nintendo has the rights to, because there's some games that were made for the NES or Super NES or Game Boy that they don't have the rights to put back out. People will subscribe to the virtual console service, even though they're not going to call it that, in droves. And Nintendo will get money from everybody every month, instead of just once in a while when our favorite title comes out. That's a win-win for everybody. They also need to find a way to combine the portable system and the home system. I know it sounds nuts, but Nintendo has been putting out some amazing games for both systems. The problem is they're splitting their resources in half. When the average customer looks at the Wii U or the 3DS by itself, not as a two-piece platform, it seems like the number of titles available for them is low. But when you look at them combined together, pardon me, the number of titles is great. Nintendo has perfected streaming from the Wii U to the Wii controller. So my guess is, what if, and this is a pipe dream, but what if the NX streamed from the controller to the TV? in 2 to 3 years, they might actually be able to do this pretty well. I mean, right now I can use my iPad to send something up to my Apple TV, and there's a little bit of lag, but I bet you Nintendo could figure out that lag a little bit better because it's more of a priority for them than it is for Apple. The portable console would just become the main console. And as far as portable consoles go, nobody can touch Nintendo. So now that the portable's the main console, it won't be as powerful, but my phone display is 1080p. The graphics aren't next gen, but most of the time when people buy a Nintendo product, it isn't for the graphics. I know some people would say, but then the developers have to, like, I guess, down-res their games to work on Nintendo consoles. And that's a hurdle that they would have to figure out. For the moment-to-moment experiences you get when playing Nintendo games, that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for the prettiest graphics. Or at least, I'm not. 2 more things that Nintendo has to tackle for the NX to be a success. Streaming. Twitch and YouTube integration. I don't see this happening. Nintendo right now seems to think that these platforms cost them money or keep them from controlling their PR messaging. Nintendo needs to get out of their own way when it comes to user-generated content. Currently, Nintendo seems to want to very, very tightly control content on YouTube. I think this is a mistake, and it's one that the Big N needs to avoid. It turns users away. People are less likely to stream their games if it's a hassle, and a lot of players go out and buy games that they've seen played on Twitch or YouTube. And the very last thing that Nintendo absolutely has to do, it might be the most important, is they have to make sure that if they want the NX to be a success, they need to support multiple engines. Developers don't want to reinvent the wheel just to port to another platform. If Nintendo works with engine developers, then more games will be on their systems. So make sure that the new Unreal Engine, make sure that the what's it called from Valve, Source. Make sure that Source 2 would work. Make sure that that one from DICE works. They have to make sure that all of these engines work with whatever the NX is. That way, a developer writes the code once, makes a few changes, and then pushes it to the new console, so that it's easy for developers to get their content onto Nintendo platforms so that the Nintendo consumers can buy them. The announcement of the NX isn't a surprise for me. I don't think we're going to see it for a few years. I know that we're not going to hear anything about it until next year's E3, and I don't think that it'll come out next year. I think it's a 2017 release at the soonest. If Nintendo wants to make it a success, they need to look at their mistakes in the past and avoid them. What do you think? Do you think that is there anything that I left off that Nintendo needs to do in order to make sure that the NX is a success? Or am I flat out wrong about any of the points that I made? Email me, runjumpstomp@gmail.com, or hit me up on Twitter @runjumpstomp.